Hello, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for dropping in to Healing Body, Mind, and Soul with Aeriol. I'm Aeriol Ascher, your host, and today I have the honor and the privilege to be here with my great friend, mentor, and my chiropractor, Dr. David. Now, I have to tell you how I met Dr. David. I met him through a mutual acquaintance, Dr. Beth. You may have checked out Dr. Beth's interview on our podcast earlier this month. And what I went to go see Dr. David about was I had a kink in my neck. And he started doing all this great work, muscle testing me, and he was asking me all these questions, and he had me lay down. And his work really took me by surprise because I had been seeing other chiropractors, and I loved it. I was like, oh my God, this man is a genius. And I love the work that he was doing with the biofield, and how he was explaining his work to me, and how he was really just being so authentic and helping me get out of my own way. And it was really interesting to me. So I thought that it would be interesting to you. So I had to get him on the podcast. I did go to his workshop with a friend of his who has also been on the podcast, so you may recognize something about that. And I loved his teaching style. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. David, and I'm just going to let him share to you about how he got into his work, how he describes his body of work, and some great things that you can do if you want to experience this kind of work. So without further ado, Dr. David!
Thank you, Aeriol. And of course, the big challenge is to do a good job on your questions all within 20 minutes. So I will do my best. So the first question was how I got into this line of work. So I'll try to keep that under 3 or 4 minutes. So I'm 63 years old now as this is being recorded in June of 2019. So I was born in 1956. And ever since I was a little kid, I had questions that were deep inside of me that were burning that other kids didn't seem to have. And I didn't have the words for it at the time, but if I were to go back and from my current understanding and put words on what was driving me as a child, it would be something like, well, if there really is a God, and God is such a loving God, why is there so much suffering? Why do human beings suffer so much? Why is there so much pain? And why are some people so happy and healthy and successful? And why are some people so unhealthy and unhappy and unsuccessful? And then there was just sort of this pre-verbal sense that there was something more available than what most people were living. And I wanted to understand. I've always wanted to understand. I wasn't a person that just wanted to do what worked. I wanted to understand why things worked. What were the laws that were governing what showed up in life? Because I had this faith that it was not random, that we didn't live in a random universe, but there was nobody in my world that even had any conversations about the questions that I had, and I didn't get a sense that there was anybody I knew that had the answers, but somehow I had this faith that the answers existed somewhere, and that somehow I could connect with the answers, and that somehow I would eventually connect with the answers. And so that's kind of what's been driving me my whole life, was to understand these things. And then the other thing I would say that's been driving my life is that from the time I could remember, and I mean way back as a child, I was always a very gifted teacher. If there was anything that I understood or I knew how to do, I intuitively knew how to teach it. And so my passion is really combining those two threads, is being an eternal student of life and understanding as much as I can and applying what I learn to make sure that it works in my experience. And then extending the opportunity to share what I've discovered along my journey with other people. And so as that journey unfolded and I refined my search a little bit, what I eventually concluded is that human beings were this amazing, mysterious alchemy of body and soul, and that both our bodies and our souls were under a tremendous amount of stress and even assault, and that what I was really doing for myself, I didn't realize this till much later, but that what I was really doing for myself was learning how to free my body and how to free my soul, so that my body was free and my soul was free. And when I realized that that's what I was all about, then all of my work, because I do a lot of different things, as you know, but there's a method to my madness. And what I realized is that everything that I do for people falls into one of those two categories. Everything that I'm doing is either designed to facilitate freeing their body and or facilitate freeing their soul. And the beautiful thing is that they're related, in the sense that if you can help in one area, it makes it easier to open up the other as well. So for example, an easy way to demonstrate how the body and the soul, or the body and consciousness, are connected is if you've ever been drunk, where you're changing the body, you can see how consciousness changes. Or if you've ever been in love or inspired, you can see how that changes the body. So we're really multidimensional beings. And the thing that is so amazing to me is that I'm in a place in my life right now where it's so self-evident. It's so obvious to me, the truth of what I'm sharing with you. And therefore, it becomes really obvious to me that if you want to optimize your own life, or if you want to help other people to optimize their own lives, you either need to address both body and soul, or at least you need to have a paradigm where you understand how that works, and to be able, if you don't have expertise in one of those areas, at least to be able to partner with other professionals who have that kind of expertise. And so over the years, I've worked with thousands of patients and students and clients. And because of the reputation that I have, I usually get people who have been on the path a while, and they've been to a lot of other people before, and they've made some gains and they've had some successes, but now they're kind of at a plateau, and no one's been able to help them break through the plateau. And what I seem to be really good at, because I'm kind of good at pattern recognition, and I understand how things fit together, and I have a good breadth and depth of knowledge. And so what I seem to be really good at is helping those people to break through whatever ceiling they're at. So I'm probably not the best person for the person that is just beginning to get on the path of self-knowledge and natural healing, but for someone who's more seasoned, who's been around the block, and who's really been dedicating themselves to their wellness and self-realization for a while, and they're at a plateau, and they could really use a good healer and coach and guide that really can help you to go farther. That's really my sweet spot, and the people that I think can really get the most benefit from me. So that's the big picture of what guides my work. And then in terms of how that translates into what I do with people, I see people one-on-one, and then I also do as Aeriol mentioned before, I also do workshops from time to time. Just to complete the workshop thought, I kind of took a hiatus from workshopping for a while, but then I got back into it because one of my students had made such progress in her own healing and in her own self-realization that she was really embodying much of my teachings, and she was wanting to go to the next level and become a teacher of transformation as well. And so I thought the best way to help her, and it would be fun for me, would be for the two of us to work together to generate a transformational workshop, and then out of that to create an opening for a intentional community of people that are really committed to living and practicing transformation. So that's what's happening now on the workshop end. And for those of you that listen to this quickly, I don't know when this is going to air, but we've got a couple of one-day workshops coming up. One is on Thursday, June the 20th, and the other one is on Saturday, September the 21st. And these will be intensive one-day workshops.
And these are in person, right?
Yeah,
these are in San Jose, California, or nearby?
The first one will definitely be in San Jose. The second one, we're not sure yet, but it'll be somewhere in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we do other work that can be done virtually, but I will only do this particular workshop in person because it's a very delicate operation of guiding someone kind of beyond the conditioned mind into a more authentic spaciousness. It can be a tricky journey, and I like to do it in person with people, and I like to do it in a group setting. So that's what's happening right now with my workshop work. And then with my one-on-one work with clients and patients, about 80% of that can be done virtually, and people can get a lot of benefit out of that 80%. But ideally, it would be a combination, at least, of some in-person time and some virtual time, because as Aeriol was alluding to earlier, one of the things that I do with people is I'm an empath in terms of energy, and I have hundreds and hundreds of different vials that have different energetic frequencies. And what I can do is I can expose these vials to a person's energy field in a particular algorithm and sequence, and I can gather a tremendous amount of information about what's going on with you energetically in that moment, and I can translate that information to developing very customized nutritional and herbal programs for people. And then
can I step in there? I just want to say, I really am, I have to say I have a testimonial here, because I really had been like having debilitating low back pain on and off. And Dr. David took a look at me and he goes, "Oh my God, your adrenals are shot." And then he didn't just stop there. He did a lot of muscle testing on me, and went through these vials and worked up a system for me. And what I really appreciated about that was he said, "Oh, you're sensitive." And I was very appreciative that he noticed that, because a lot of times when you go to practitioners, they are not geared towards sensitive people, and they kind of manhandle you or hurt your body in an attempt to heal it somehow. But I really appreciate how sensitive he was and how sensitive he was to my sensitivities, because I finally got some work done, right? I finally got rid of that back pain. And I love that Dr. David was doing some work on my physical body, and he reminded me how strong my lower back is and how that's where the strength in my body is, because I had been having this mindset of my back is going out and I'm having this trouble. And it was really something that, it was my adrenals and some other stuff that was going on that I needed to release. And I don't think that anybody else could have gotten it out of me. So I just have to say that Dr. David really saved my hiney there. So I really appreciate that. And the workshop that that you were talking about, Dr. David, that out of the box thinking. I just have the perfect, I'm a visual person. So I have this awesome logo for you. So I'll have to talk to you about that. Your out of the box thinking. I love it. And out of the box teaching. I loved the workshop. My only thing was, I'm kinesthetic, so I wish there was like a kinesthetic piece to it, and more community, more people sharing, or but
we're actually redesigning that workshop so that, not necessarily kinesthetic, but we're redesigning the workshop so that the next one will have a lot more of that type of interaction and experiential work that you're talking about.
Yeah. You don't need it. I'm just saying that's one thing that I would have liked. It doesn't mean that everybody's wired the same as me, but I loved that workshop. I thought it was dynamite. I think any of our listeners could benefit from that group experience like that, because it's more potent with more people, right?
I find that if you are wanting to help someone to break open and go beyond the matrix, go beyond the conditioned matrix that most people live inside of, that if you have the right people in the room and they're guided properly, you can leverage that synergy of that group mind and that group life to really help people to break open in a way that isn't quite as easy one-on-one, but you have to know how to manage that group energy, because it's things can go south pretty easily, and but I know how to do that. And yeah, I agree with you that group consciousness, when it's aligned and it's coherent like a laser light, is very, very powerful. Just to complete the thought about my individual work, in addition to what I was talking about earlier, I also do very specific chiropractic intervention and different forms of soft tissue work. And then the other part of the work that I do one-on-one with people is something called ontological coaching. And ontology means the science or the study of being. So it's a deep level of coaching where we go beyond what people are feeling and what they're doing and what they're thinking. We might start there, but we use that as an entry point to go deeper than most people have ever gone before. And they actually have this opportunity to discover what they've been being that they didn't know they were being, that's correlating with all of these patterns of thinking and feeling and action and speech. And once you discover what you have been being, then you can take your power back and look at other possible ways of being. But if you attempt to create a new way of being without taking responsibility for what you have been being, then you're overlaying something on top of something. And you're not really freely creating something new, but at some level you're still compensating for something you haven't resolved. And so ontological coaching, where you honestly recover your beingness at that level, is extremely powerful. And then when it's combined with the type of healing work we talked about earlier, that's how I apply the principle of combining freeing the body and freeing the soul in my work. And like I said, I can do about 80% of it virtually, and I do have virtual clients all over the world, but ideally it would be good to, from time to time, to visit me where I physically am located so that we can add that other piece, but it's not absolutely necessary to get a lot of benefit.
Awesome. Dr. David, I want to go back to where we started the conversation, and what I was hearing that I loved, that I hadn't heard you say before, was that as a child you had faith that the answers to your questions would be uncovered, and I loved that. I loved that part. That do you think that you were like born with more faith than most people? I mean, I related to that. I felt that as a child as well. Um, I felt like I had a connection with other worlds when I was a child. I don't know if that's the same thing, but I just wonder how you experienced that.
Well, the way I would describe it now is different than the way I would that I experienced it as a child. The way I experienced it as a child was just a sense of I had a right to ask these questions, and I had a right to be on a journey to get meaningful answers, and I knew that there was nobody in my world that could help me with that.
Oh.
But I knew that somehow, somewhere, I would get those answers. But now, when I look back on, that's all I knew. But when I look back on it now, from my current understanding of the universe, I would say that what was going on was that I still had a connection with my multidimensional self. And as a multidimensional self, I know there are these answers.
Got it.
And so obviously I didn't experience it that way as a child, because I didn't even have the linguistic distinctions to even think about it this way. There was just a fire inside me that wasn't going to be denied. But when I look back on it now, that's how I make sense of it. That, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with the spiritual teaching called the Law of One material.
I've heard of it, but I don't know that I know.
Okay, well, that's a whole other podcast that we can talk about. But to make a long story short, the Law of One introduces a lot of interesting ideas, that teaching, and one of the interesting ideas it brings through is that there's a small percentage of human beings right now on planet Earth that did not follow the normal evolutionary patterns of how most human souls are where they are. And there's this small group of people. I mean, by small, I mean percentage worldwide. Like there might be a couple of million out of 7 or 8 billion people that in the Law of One teachings, they call these souls wanderers. And when you Google or you look up signs and symptoms that you might be a wanderer, I fit that to a T. And a wanderer is someone who has a lot of experience and familiarity with consciously being in higher dimensions. And for various reasons, maybe they want to learn something, maybe they want to help. For some reason, they've chosen to incarnate on planet Earth in this particular time-space coordinate for a very, very specific mission and purpose. And then they have certain characteristics. And this fits me to a T, because even as a young child, I was incredibly mission-driven. And if there's something, even today, at age 63, if there's something that's along my mission and purpose line, I have tremendous energy and enthusiasm for it. And if something is not on that line, I feel flat. So I'm convinced that I'm here for a very specific mission and purpose. And fortunately, I've developed the sensitivity to have the feedback between my human self and my higher self, so that I can easily tell when I'm on track and when I'm going off track, and to be able to do that without judging myself or other people, but to just have that be a part of my natural discernment and natural knowingness.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Well, Dr. David, I just think we're all lucky to have you. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to work with you And it's an honor and a privilege to be able to spend this time with you today on the Healing Body, Mind, and Soul podcast with Aeriol. Dr. David, can you tell us, can you give us your website or a great way for anybody interested in working with you to reach you?
Sure, I'll give you all my major contact points. So for my healing work specifically, it would just be my name.com, David Kamnitzer, DAVID, KA, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, I, T as in Tom, Z as in Zebra, ER.com. And there's a contact form there. If you're interested in, over the last 4 years or so, I've had a podcast series where we've done about 80 in-depth interviews. About 80% of them are me doing in-depth interviews with other people, and about 20% of them are somebody doing an in-depth interview with me. All sorts of interesting topics for light workers and older souls. And if you want to check that out, the website for that is cuttingedgedoc.com, cuttingedgedoc.com, cuttingedgedoc.com. If you want to email me directly, you can do that at David and then dot like a period, Kamnitzer, david.kamnitzer@gmail.com. And if you want to contact me by telephone, it would be at United States country code, followed by the area code 858-204-3092. And I'm currently consulting with people all over the world using Zoom. And my main physical plane office is in San Jose, California.
I love it. Dr. David, thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope that everybody got some great value and some inspiration from Dr. David. And until next time, this is Aeriol wishing you happy healing.